Before I get into the rules of engagement, I have to get into the history of this because I feel like all of us should be able to understand where things come from to know where we're going. I want to provide edification on the correlation between wrestling and boxing. So let's briefly go all the way back to the 3-digit years in ancient Greece. One of the first combat sports introduced to the ancient Olympics was wrestling, and then shortly after, an event or two later, boxing was introduced. And then later after that, a combination of the two called pankration was introduced, which is an amalgamation of wrestling and boxing with a bunch of other no-holds-barred rules, which you could say was the prehistoric MMA to an extent. Now, this isn't me saying that the Olympics created these combat sports in particular, but I'm just highlighting when these events were introduced to the Olympics as a point of reference. Then even as you move forward to the Americas around the 17 and 1800s, from the bare knuckle era to the gloved era, you had practitioners of boxing that also had wrestlers within the camp, or they wrestled themselves. Guys ranging from John L. Sullivan, Jack Johnson, Jimmy Young's trainer consulted with wrestlers for the Ali fight, Jack Dempsey practiced wrestling to work in tandem with his mauling style, and even Willie Pep had to consult with wrestlers for a series of fights with Sandy Sadler to contend with the physicality. So if even Mr. I won a round without throwing a punch, which I don't believe, by the way, understood the importance of wrestling and boxing, then that should reinforce wrestling is a very integral part of the sport, regardless of what detractors may tell you. By briefly touching on this example to show that even going back hundreds upon thousands of years, wrestling and boxing have always been paired together in some form or fashion. In order to be a professional at the highest levels of this sport, you have to be able to wrestle to some degree. Now, I said wrestling was an integral part of boxing, but what kind? Well, that would specifically be Greco-Roman wrestling. Greco-Roman wrestling is one of the oldest forms of wrestling. Now, what differentiates it from its other counterparts is that holds below the waist are forbidden. This includes grabbing the knees, thighs, legs, anything below the waist. Leg trips, kicks, knee strikes are also forbidden. And as you can notice just from me describing the rules of it, it sounds not too different from a boxing clinch. The only difference is in place of the punches, Greco-Roman wrestlers look to use throws to do damage. So all we will do is cross-reference maneuvers and terminology and pair them with the additional boxing terminology that's already established here, so I can appropriately explain the rules of engagement on the inside. Alright, I need y'all to stay with me because we have a plethora of information to go over in this section. There's going to be a lot of terminologies I'll show examples of, but we have 7 categories on the rules of engagement on the clinch and inside fighting in totality. The 7 categories we have coming up is going to be contact, tie-ups, pummeling, off-balancing, inside angles, body attacks, and centering. Now, I will go through and show examples for each one of these, but that's what we have coming up. First up is contact, which is about any maneuver that involves you making physical contact with the op, primarily via the means of physical controls, utilizing maneuvers like posts, head posts, pins, frames, nudges, shoulder bumps, inside anchors, and the safe zone. So first up we have the post, which is a carryover from wrestling and also older generations of boxing. It's primarily a stiff arm, and you want to make contact with the base of the palm of your hand, primarily on the op's head, collarbone, or chest area to stabilize them for offense. You can also use posts defensively because the basic concept of wrestling is that if you control the head, you control the body. So the same thing is if you can control the head, you can pretty much control the direction of their offense.
You can't. Because my push, they'll be here. Not here.
Yeah.
You know, here, step, no, like that. Step, bam, 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 bam. You push me, just like that. No, my position. You can't. No, look. I'm your area like that. Coach, hey, referee, it doesn't matter. No, like that. No, every time. Look, set, try. No, that. Same position. And no. You know, first 1, 2, and very important like that. 1, 2.
Oh, yeah.
You see, your cut, not my cut.
Yeah.
I want this.
Yeah.
You trash me. Boom.
Yeah.
No, 1, 2, and maybe you know I'm tight, you tight. Okay, like that every time. Okay, this is my control. You see, trash me. Look, push me. Boom, push me. You know, impossible for you.
Yeah.
Because you know I'm control. I'm tight, you tight.
Yeah.
Head posts are a direct carryover from wrestling. Utilizing your head and wedging it underneath your opposition's chin raises their center of gravity, erects their spine, and takes the power away from their base, disconnecting them from being able to drive you back, and you can drive them back. Especially in a position where they have overhooks on you, by digging your head underneath their chin and driving them back, you also are able to wrench your own arms free to get off free offense. Pins are a function of blocking punch lanes or to occupy the gloves, elbow, or bicep to hold them in place. By using these pins, you can deflect the punches, or overall, over time, you can dissuade them from throwing the punches altogether, opening you up for your own offense. But typically, just putting them out there proactively or putting them out there with a probing rhythm, these pins can act as a natural built-in defense. So as you can see, pins can work as a form of incidental punch traffic by constantly blocking and checking the hands and the arms, but you still need to be defensively aware because the same openings that will present themselves when throwing the actual punches are there when you're putting out these pins. So just as much as you want to set up your offense, be cognizant of the openings you're creating as well. I'm going to pair frames and nudges together in this stretch because you kind of can't use one without the other. A nudge is you trying to gradually open space for or a lane for a punch by using incremental arm strength, whether it be with a pin or a post. But typically you would do this with a nudge when you're in tight with the forearm. And frames are just using the forearm as a restriction bar to pin the opposition's arms or gloves to their chest to open them up for offense around the side or up the middle. You can also put a frame on the opposition's chest to square them up, opening up the center line for you to hit them with offense, and pairing them with nudges can allow you to open up space. So you can use frames to force things open and nudges to incrementally open things up for offense. Next is the shoulder bump. It's similar to the frame and nudge, but the difference is a frame and nudge is gradual, whereas a shoulder bump is instantaneous. So you're trying to quickly create space to thread the gap with a punch. You can also do this, not only to thread the gap for punches, but like let's say you're in a clinch exchange and the opposition is trying to hold you in this position, you can use a shoulder bump to the center of their chest to open up the lane and change your position to a different transition in a grappling exchange. These were typically, like I said, you want to try to have the shoulder aimed into the center of their chest. If it's off to the side, you won't get the same effect. If you get into the center of their chest, you can break their base and square them up so you can get off clean, effective offense. Inside anchors. This is a maneuver mainly popularized by Roberto Duran. You would fish for underhooks, but you would stop just before the elbow and flail your arms out just like the arms of an anchor for a ship, to bow out the opponent's arms with your elbows to open up their body, for hooks and uppercuts. And also, if you move your head slots, you can also snake uppercuts to the head. And when the opposition tries to throw back, because you have your arms flared out, it acts as a partial deflection for the shots. And also, you can get a direct feel and read on when they're trying to throw. So if they try to change trajectory to your head, you can move your head out the way. This is a very advantageous position to take on the inside once you get the opposition's back against the ropes. Like I said, you fish for underhooks, but you stop before the elbow and you flail your arms out like the arms of an anchor, and you can dig to the body and look for uppercuts up top. I call this taking the safe zone. You typically would be either in a high guard or a half guard, and you nestle your head into the opposition's chest, either just underneath their chin or right next to it on their collarbone. By being directly in the center of the opposition's chest with a high guard or a half guard, the opposition can't punch you. No, they can't punch you with any type of substantial force. They might as well pluck you. By being inside of their chest, they can't generate no leverage or anchorage. And from that point, by being in the center of their chest, if they try to clinch you or anything else, you at any point in time, you could just push them directly off with double posts. You can just immediately double post them off of you to get them off of you. There's nothing that they can do from this position because you can't clinch a high guard for one, because all you need to do is extend your arms to get them off of you. So this is a good position if you want a breather while you're on the inside. You nestle yourself directly in their chest with a high guard or a half guard directly in the center of their chest. Take your time, and if you want to get them off of you, double post. Next thing we have is tie-ups, which is any physical action that directly connects you to the opposition with grips of any kind. So we're going to be talking about wrist and bicep control, elbow wedges, the variations of 2-on-1s, underhooks and overhooks, pinch headlock, and half and full collar ties. So wrist controls primarily would happen in wrestling because you don't have on gloves. So wrist control is not really going to be applicable in boxing. So we're going to talk about bicep control. Typically when you would duck and smother or just straight up smothering to enter a clinch, on one side you're getting an underhook or an overhook, and then on the side that your head is typically on, you look to get bicep control. By taking bicep control, you have your hand actively on their biceps so you can stop them from punching. So it's just a placeholder to rest your glove on their bicep. If they're up high, whichever side your head is on, or even if it's on the opposing side, by snaking your glove just inside the grip on their bicep to just stifle or stop any punches they try to send their way. So an elbow wedge is slightly different than a bicep control, because with a bicep control, you're just proactively touching the bicep to stop it from punching. With an elbow wedge, it's when you actively either try to fish your elbow out if you have a sling, but preferably you could do this with a glove as well, into the crook of the op's elbow. So that way, if they're throwing punches on you at the time, you can defend them or mitigate the force on those punches by directly putting your hand on the elbow to stifle the force coming out of it. Next up, we have 2-on-1s. Typically, the way you would see this used in wrestling is that you would get a 2-on-1, whether it be with an undergrab or overgrab, to stay attached to the opposition. So that way you can be able to either change position with them or drag them to the ground. The way you would see this applied in boxing is that if you're close enough in a clinch exchange, or you're just outside of mid-range and you're at the inside range, when the opposition tries to take an angle change after throwing a punch, if you can get a hold of that arm and get a 2-on-1 on that arm when they throw the punch, as they take the angle, you can stay connected to them with the 2-on-1 to help mirror and match the angle. So that way they won't get the angle on you and you're trying to hurry up and catch up. By staying attached to them with this 2-on-1, you can follow them through the angle. So next we have underhooks and overhooks. This will be a big staple in understanding how to maneuver in the clinch. Underhooks is the act of sliding your arm underneath the opposition's arm past the elbow so you can get full control and manipulation of their body. And an overhook is overlapping your arm outside of it, hooking your arm underneath it to get control of their arms. An underhook and an overhook is the typical way you would enter a clinch. When each of you have underhooks and an overhook on either side, whoever has the underhook can turn on that side. So it's going to be a constant game of doing pirouettes back and forth. Now, there are certain situations where you can get a double underhook. When you have a double underhook, you have absolute control of the opposition's body. And when you have a double overhook, you have control of the opposition's arms. So be aware of when you're playing with underhooks and overhooks, whether it be with singles or doubles. If you have a single overhook, you're controlling that arm. That doesn't mean you have control of the other arm. If you have a single underhook, you have control of their weight in that side. So if you want control of their body in either direction, then you will likely want to get double underhooks. If you want to get control of their arms, you want to get double overhooks, and preferably lock your gloves with an S grip. And that's just lacing the fingers inside one another. So next up we have half and full collar ties. You'll probably mostly see half collar ties as a way to hold and hit by cupping the back of a man's head and pulling them down. You can try to pull them into punches. You have to be kind of be careful with these, because if the referee picks up on you being egregious with it, you'll get warned or penalized to some extent. But you can also, utilize the jab and miss it intentionally to cup the back of a man's head and pull him into a shot with the backhand. With double collar ties, you're more so putting yourself in a liability, because you can't really hold or bear down on a man's neck too long before the referee will break you. And also you're occupying both of your hands while the man can still punch you with two of his. So it's more so as a stalling point, but you're opening yourself up for additional offense. Next up is pummeling. Pummeling is the process of fighting for dominant control and positioning with the purpose of scoring offense, utilizing any of the forms of contact or tie-ups that we showed you. For this one, it's relatively straightforward and simple, so we're just going to showcase a basic pummeling drill to introduce the concept to you, and also showcase a clip from the Greco-Roman wrestling instructional just to show you how you can advance it a bit once you get comfortable with the basic concept of fishing for over-unders.
The common idea of pummeling is this. Both wrestlers are in and out, digging for underhooks, but as you can see, with that type of a pummel drill, neither wrestler is establishing dominant position. Now, if we do this drill and use this little method or technique to dig for an underhook and control an underhook and prevent our opponent from pummeling in, then that's a good technique, because I've pummeled into a position where I've established dominant control with my underhook. Pummel back the other side, dominant control through a double underhook, which has made my pummeling count for a purpose. The other thing, when we look at pummeling for a purpose for dominant control, we want to not only control the tie-up position, but we also want to control with our hip position and also with our knee position. As you can see, my hip and legs here, I'm also making my opponent very uncomfortable, because I'm not only controlling this, but I'm controlling the space here. Outside position, also inside position here. You can see again, I've established dominant position here with my legs, and also dominant position here with my tie-up.
Next up is inside angles, step arounds, shifts, hop pivots, and front and back step shuffles. I don't need to overly explain this one myself too much, because this has been talked about on this channel a multitude of times, so I'm just going to let the man himself reiterate this in his words.
These positions on the inside have the option to angle to the strong side or towards the rear hand. But typically, stepping strong side means you're going back into equal positioning, as the maneuver may leave both fighters squared. Or worse, it could result in you putting yourself in disadvantageous positions as the stem of the T on the inside, as I just explained. but sometimes a surprise element of the strong side angle change mixed with high-level skills like controls can still work, but there is much more risk involved. What we typically see from fighters seeking advantageous positioning on the inside is the weak side angle. High-level practitioners still typically use some form of control on the arm or glove they aim the angle towards so they can achieve advantageous positioning relatively safely. There are several ways to quickly or smoothly get around to the advantageous position on the weak side. The simplest way is the plain step around, which typically involves a half step towards the weak side with your lead foot, then a slight pivot or slightly wider half step with your rear foot, which then effectively changes the angle. Other methods of achieving the angle involve inside L steps, back step shuffles on closed stance opponents, front step shuffles against open stance opponents, or hot pivots, which all take a bit more athleticism. Whichever maneuver is chosen, if used correctly with controls, the closed T advantageous positioning on the inside grants a high-level fighter golden opportunities to attack with power punches without having to worry about return fire until the opponent adjusts.
Next, we have body attacks. These aren't actual punches to the body. Body attacks are about tie-ups used on the torso to change position dramatically. And I'll show you a few examples here. And last up is centering, which is you trying to fight to keep your hips square on the inside to deny the opposition to get their hips on the outside, basically putting you at the stem of the T position on the inside. So just trying to mirror the angle or deny them the angle with physicality or throwing them off their base.
From the inside range or the distance where a jab wouldn't be applicable, the same concept of the T advantageous position applies, only in reverse. Now you want to be the top of the T, and you want your opponent to be the stem, or what I call the closed T advantageous positioning. Essentially, the advantage here means you are on or standing in your opponent's center line. Being the top of the T means you're able to strike with either hand, typically including a rear hand that your opponent's bladed stance is turned away from. At the same time, the opponent's lead hand is typically useless as it's pinned or just has no room to open up with offense, and its rear hand has half a target at best. At worst, they're in an inverted L facing the wrong direction and they have no target at all. Until the opponent adjusts their position to match you on the angle, they're completely vulnerable as you're set in stance before them with both hands free, ready to strike. It depends. It depends, because you can end up in that 7 position too.
Yeah.
Where both, you know what I'm saying? If you're completely bladed and he's squared, yeah, bro, he's got the advantage. But
I think that's what that was more so what he was asking. If the other man was like bladed and the other man was square.
No, right, because that typically means that you are your opponent's center line. So you don't even see one of the hands. The hand you're not, the hand you're not facing, you don't see. So that's the problem with the T position on the inside. It's an advantageous position for the guy that's squared. But in the 7, where it's more so you guys are locked up on the lead hands, or it doesn't even matter if one is squared or one is slightly bladed, but a little bit more squared, that's what I call 7s. So, and it's usually only meaningful when one guy's got the half man and one guy's got, or whatever. And it's usually a high guard when he's squared, but one's in the half man that's bladed and the other's in the high guard that's squared, and you're meeting where, the half man's lead hand meets, whichever side that might be, whether orthodox or southpaw. So that's in fact that's the only way that would happen, in a half man and in a high guard. But But yeah, so that depends. That advantage depends on whoever controls the lead hand. The advantage of that situation depends on who's controlling the lead hand. You both are holding the phone on the rear hand regardless, or on the opposite hand regardless. But the ones that are touching, who's controlling what? You know what I'm saying? Is a half man framing that lead hand? If not, then that half man is definitely in danger of the arm that's closest to him, the hook. If you're not controlling that arm, you're definitely in danger of a hook. Whereas the high guard dude has less danger. Just because he's in a high guard. I mean, there's obviously openings around the high guard that you could get to, but it's a little less danger than not having nothing protecting your head.
Yeah.
On that side of your lead hand. But anyway.
So I'm going to break this up into two subcategories under a larger umbrella. Clinch fighting is the art of controlling and manipulating the opposition to deny them the opportunity to strike on their terms, with the intent of stifling or stopping action entirely and moving to a favorable position. You'll typically see this with duck and smothers, then the transition into pummeling for over-unders and wait for a referee break. Inside fighting, by conjunction, is the art of closing and reducing distance between you and the opposition, utilizing fundamental footwork of cutting off the ring and physical controls to pin the opposition in place and physically maneuver them in the path of your offense. And you utilize your knowledge of physical controls and clinch denials to deny the opposition a chance to stall action. So under my specific definition, if a fighter does not possess a clinch denial game, they are not a complete inside fighter. Now, this is not a perfect one-to-one rock, paper, scissors type of deal, as there are other skill sets within the system of boxing that can determine the outcome of a fight as well as intangibles. But this is just more so for the sake of theory within the scope of inside fighting specifically. Let's say boxer A in this example has a clinch game. Then let's say boxer B is an inside fighter that possesses no clinch denial game without the use of physical controls. Chances are, barring any other intangibles and other skills within the system of boxing, boxer A will be able to constantly break the momentum and rhythm of boxer B and win the bout. Inversely, once again, let us say boxer A does possess a clinch game, and boxer B has an inside game with a clinch denial game. Chances are, excluding the other facets of the system, boxer A
Gonna have a bad time.
All right, let's bring it on home. You got it. Boxing and wrestling are cousins more than they are strangers. The level of nuance you can reach just by watching, drilling, and performing these moves under duress is entirely dependent upon your efforts. The system of boxing is very advanced yet simple all at the same time. You can cross-reference any number of styles or techniques into it. The limit is only with your ability to find the connections. The clinch and inside fighting are pivotal parts of this sport, and we cannot allow skills to be forgotten to time or eroded from training environments out of negligence or team mentality. For the sport and the system of boxing to flourish, we need to be open to unfamiliar information and accountable of our willful ignorance with how we practice and understand our sport. I hope you learned something. I'm done here.
Fight fam. Boxing is called the sweet science for a reason. Every slip, every counter, every trap, it's all hidden in the details. At Boxing Gems, we break down those details frame by frame so fans can see the art behind the fight. If you enjoy our YouTube film studies and want to go deeper down the rabbit hole, Patreon is the place. It helps us keep producing high-quality breakdowns without worrying about algorithms, and it gives you exclusive access to the content that can't make it on the YouTube. Get extended live stream breakdowns with more detail and analysis. Ask your own questions in the 24/7 chats, decide what fights or fighters we cover, and get personalized private analysis. Gain access to our thriving betting community as well as Boxing Gems weekly picks and much more. Your support means we can keep studying the sport we love and showing why boxing is the most beautiful science. Join the Boxing Gems community on Patreon and let's keep breaking down the fight game together. This is Ryan, professional boxing analyst and founder of Boxing Gems Film Study. Film don't lie.